Hi everyone, and welcome to Mental Health Myth Busting with That's Mental. So today is myth number 5, and it's called, Are you feeling depressed? Just throw yourself into work. We already touched upon this subject a little bit in myth number 3, which was all about how if you're feeling depressed, it's easy to just stop having a negative thought, to switch off your negative thoughts and just sort of get on with it. So we already covered the fact that it's not that simple and why it is that people might think like this. So the person who submitted this myth to me actually added on the back of it, yeah, well, if it was that simple, then I'd have already done it. If it worked long term, that it would be a really cheap and easy strategy as opposed to going to therapy, for example. And not dealing with strong emotions is always a great idea. So I think you can already tell by that person's response how they feel about it, but it also just goes to illustrate some of the points that make this a myth. The problem with this type of sentence or this type of suggestion is that it trivializes mental health issues. It makes it seem as if they're easy to get over or as if they're no big deal in the first place. But as you can tell, like I said, by that person's reaction, clearly it's way more than it appears to be on the surface, and clearly getting over a mental health problem isn't as easy as it seems. Whether it's being depressed, whether you're feeling anxious, whether it's burnout, no matter what it is, even if it's a more, let's say, serious and long-term condition that you're experiencing, it can't be solved as simply as just throwing yourself into something else. Why not? So, first of all, when you're feeling depressed or anxious, it can be really difficult to find the energy to even do something else. Often you end up in a negative cycle where you don't really feel like going out, you have less energy, you don't really want to take part in the things that you normally enjoy. So I mean, even trying to think about starting something new or throwing yourself full time into something seems almost impossible. Often these states of mind, like I just described, are quite negative and paralyzing, so they really prevent you from doing anything. Like you literally, you have no energy, you just want to stay on your couch and you feel rubbish. The possibility of throwing yourself into something is really, really diminished. Second of all, it's important to consider that any activity, whether it's taking up a new one or even doing one that you're sort of used to, might exacerbate a person's mental health problems. So, for example, if you're feeling depressed, it could be that going outside to get some fresh air or going for a walk might actually not be that helpful for you. It might not take your mind off things at all. In fact, you might end up feeling worse. You might end up feeling more lonely, more isolated. If you see people working together or groups of friends, this might be really harmful for you and actually make you feel worse. As this person who submitted this myth pointed out, it's a lot more complex than just distracting yourself for a while to sort of get over or work through a mental health problem. If any of you have ever experienced any uncomfortable thoughts or even just putting off dealing with something or making a big decision, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that you have to do it, it's on your mind, but you really don't want to. So you just keep putting it off. You're like, yeah, I'll deal with it eventually. But in the back of your mind, you constantly know that it's there and that it needs your attention, and that if you don't deal with it, eventually it's going to get worse, or something's going to happen, or it's going to get out of control, or you will have more things to manage. And in a way, it's kind of the same thing with a mental health issue. If you're just ignoring it and pretending like it's not happening, or just, like as this original person just throw yourself into something else, you still know in the back of your mind that there's an issue that you have to deal with. So we all know that at some point you have to deal with it, and mental health issues are really no different than perhaps that huge debt or bill that you have to pay off and have been ignoring for a long time in that respect. And so when it comes to mental health, though, often the reason that you're experiencing distress is because there's a much bigger problem at hand than what the symptoms are actually showing. So, you could be anxious, but you could have a bigger problem, bigger fear. Maybe you have to make a big life decision. Maybe you're about to move to another country. Maybe you're breaking up, or on a more positive note, committing to something new. And that could be causing you underlying anxiety that's seeping into your everyday life. And it could even be that this anxiety that you're experiencing is coming from past experiences, that you've had issues that you've not resolved, and that's why it's creating all these feelings. This issue, like I've said already several times, can't be resolved by distracting yourself. It's something that you're really going to have to work on, either by yourself or you have to get help. So you can either consult with a therapist or with a coach, or even just through talking with your friends or people that are close to you about the issue that you're experiencing. But it's something that you're going to have to really address and look at and try to understand so that you can create steps to move forward and get past it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about why this type of comment to people isn't helpful and what you can do about it. Again, I think I already covered this in myth number 3 and in a few of the other videos, but still, if you recognize yourself and now you're thinking, oh no, okay, what can I say to someone that might be a bit more helpful? Here are some ideas. So first of all, just recognize that that person shared something personal with you and they were open, and that they trusted you. So I think it's quite important. It's not always easy to talk about mental health issues, so just thank them for that and acknowledge them and show that you heard what they had to say. Realize that when you make these types of suggestions, like just switch it off or just throw yourself into something else, it actually almost could come across as disrespectful, like I said in the beginning, like you're trivializing the issue. And it also kind of implies that they weren't clever enough to think of it themselves before. So just bear that in mind when you jump to solution and problem solving, which is not always the answer. I know that's not necessarily the case. I know that's not always people's intention, but that's the way it can come across, and that's why we have to be mindful of what we say. Of course, it's important to realize that this person is going through a deeper issue, and that they cannot fix it on their own, like I said, so just to acknowledge that as well, whether it's internally to yourself or if you verbalize it to them. Yeah, instead, thank them for sharing, maybe ask them if they've already thought about asking for professional help, whether they've sought it before or whether they have someone who can help them. And if you don't know what to do and you're really stuck, just tell them, I'm really sorry, I'm not sure what to say, I hope you can find some help, and just, you don't always have to have a solution for everything. So yeah, you go, that's myth number 5, and that's a few tips on what you can do in these kinds of situations. I hope you found it helpful, and if you have another myth that you want me to bust, then please let me know. See you next time.